Hey everybody, it's the Fat Man here. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be going over some Mandela effects today. If you're unfamiliar with the Mandela effect, hopefully you have already watched my Berenstain Bears video. If not, I'll try to put a link in the description section down below. There are a ton of them out there. I decided to just do some of the ones that I have noticed over the years myself. I guess the exception to that is the Shazam movie. And they just made a Shazam movie about DC's old Captain Marvel character, who is Billy Batson, and he says Shazam and he gets struck by lightning and then he's an adult superhero. That's not what we're talking about. Do you remember a movie in the 90s starring Sinbad as a genie named Shazam? A lot of people do. I personally don't. But we'll talk about it anyway. A lot of people remember this movie, and there was a similar movie starring Shaquille O'Neal, and that was called Kazam. But people swear that the two movies they came out around the same time and they were competitors, kind of like Coke and Pepsi. And I have noticed that over the years. I remember in the late 80s, for instance, there were a bunch of underwater movies all came out at the same time. And they would have sometimes similar themes. Like maybe there was an alien or something on the bottom of the ocean, and the heroes in each movie had to deal with it. I remember in the 90s, a couple of asteroid movies came out at the same time. There were a couple of volcano movies came out at the same time. So that's not unheard of. But yeah, do you remember a genie movie called Shazam? If so, leave a comment in the comments section down below. And I guess I'm just going to move on. Right next to that is Looney Tunes, and this is one I remember big time. I remember when I saw Roger Rabbit in the movie theater. Before that, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then after I saw Roger Rabbit, I said, I want to draw tunes for a living. And I am an art teacher now. So I do actually teach kids to draw tunes. But at any rate, how do you remember tunes spelled? I remember it being tunes as in short for cartoons. And all through the movie Roger Rabbit, they're referring to all of the cartoon characters as tunes, right? And this is where they got that from, Looney Tunes, because they are cartoons and they're lunatics, right? They act crazy. I think that's what set Warner Brothers apart from Disney. Was the Disney stuff was a little more, it's, Mickey Mouse walking along whistling, whereas Bugs Bunny was more apt to put dynamite down your pants or something, right? So they were literally Looney Tunes. Well, the spelling has changed. It's no longer like their cartoons. Now it's Tunes, like music. And a lot of people have noticed old Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff. Often they were our introduction to classical music when we were kids. So yes, music plays a part, but it doesn't seem like it's a big enough part that would be the name. And I think just visually, most people remember the double O in Looney and then the double O in Tune. So if you see the new Looney Tunes logo where it's Tunes, it just looks strange. So again, what do you remember? Do you remember it like I do, where it was the double O? Or do you remember it where it's the musical version? Let us know down below. I'm going to leave the top left corner for last, so I'm going to start going down the page here. Hitler had brown eyes. That was a big one. When I was a kid growing up, I always thought it was weird when we would learn about World War II in history class, um, that Hitler was saying only, these Aryan people with blonde hair and blue eyes were the only ones that should live or whatever. Um, even as a little kid, I was like, dude, you got brown eyes and dark hair. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what the heck? And the other thing that we were taught was he wasn't even from Germany. And so anytime he would be talking about the German people, I thought that was weird too. Um, Personally, I remember Hitler being Polish and that it was weird that he invaded Poland or whatever, or, however you want to put it. Like he left, he got an army, he came back, and he was attacking his own people then. And that's why he started there. Like I vividly remember that as the history lesson. And then years later, I heard people saying he was Austrian. And as of the making of this video, which it's July 23rd, 2021, as of today on Wikipedia, they say he was born in Germany and he was German. And as of today, he has blue eyes. And by the way, if you're kind of new, you might be wondering why I'm saying as of today. The frustrating thing with the Mandela effects is they will flip-flop. So it could be tomorrow when I wake up and check Wikipedia, they will say something else. They will say, oh, Hitler had brown eyes after all, that kind of thing. We do see some of that. Like I'll go down to Sex and the City next. What do you remember the name of that show being? I remember it being Sex in the City, because that's where the girls lived. They lived in the city. There's a ton of videos out there with people saying the name of the show. They all say Sex in the City. It was a very popular show, so people had coffee mugs and stuff with the show's logo on it. These were officially made mugs, it's not like they were homemade or something. All this stuff all said Sex in the City. People got a bunch of DVD cases and stuff like that. It all says the same thing. But then it changed to Sex and the City. And about half of the physical items that people owned seemed different, but the other half stayed the same. So I thought that was weird, right? But the videos all said in. If they won an award or something like that, the presenter would say Sex in the City. So I thought that was a weird one. The one below it there is the Berenstain Bears. I already covered that one, so I'm going to ignore that for right now. Coca-Cola. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an image that corresponded with my own memory. Like I said, I'm an art teacher now. I used to be an artist. I've done a lot of graphic design work over the years. And for various reasons, when I was younger, I had to draw the Coca-Cola logo. Sometimes I'd have to paint a billboard or something like that in small towns where I live. And at any rate, you see sort of the style of the Coca-Cola logo, how it looks kind of like cursive. The hyphen between Coca and Cola, it was a shape. It wasn't just a normal hyphen. The beginning of the shape kind of went up a little bit like a wave, and then it dropped down lower and then slightly up again on the end, and it was a very fluid shape. And each end of that hyphen ended in points. Just like the C on Coca, it starts with a point and you go around and you make the C shape and it kind of underlines the word, and then it ends in a point. That's the way the hyphen was. That has changed. And this is another one that flip-flops a lot. Sometimes it's just a regular hyphen. It's just a perfect rectangle. Other times it's like an italic rectangle where the whole thing is leaning a little bit to the right. So I thought that was odd. Another thing that's odd is on cola. It looks like it's the letter L goes up and loops around now and is coming back over to the C. That was never the case for me growing up. For me, that looked more like a traditional cursive L. So that looks weird to me. I'll do Pikachu. Pikachu's a little after my time, but I saw him enough that I knew the tip of his tail was black. That has changed. Now the tip of Pikachu's tail is yellow. And it looks weird. You know, the character design now looks kind of plain. It just seems wrong when you look at it. So what about you guys? What do you remember? Were you at all familiar with Pikachu? If so, do you remember an all yellow tail? Or do you remember a tail like this where it had some black at the tip? Next, we'll do Fruit of the Loom. This one's pretty simple. I remember the cornucopia, right? Most people seem to. Most people remember having that cornucopia behind it. Now, that has changed. It's the same logo without a cornucopia behind it. It's just fruit. So that's weird. The next one I'll do is Jiffy peanut butter. A lot of people remember Jiffy. This is one that I see in Mandela groups online. It will start a fight quite a bit. I have vivid memories of an aunt who came up from Florida, and I didn't get along with her. Her side of the family was kind of holier than thou, and she just liked to argue with people. You know, like whatever you said, you know, she'd find something wrong with it, blah, blah, blah. I remember one time saying something about Jiffy peanut butter, because I think she said, like, I think we offered her kid a peanut butter sandwich. And she said something like, well, it better be such and such a name brand because we won't settle for anything less. And she's like, what kind of peanut butter do you eat? And I said, Jiffy. And she said, do you mean Jif or do you mean Skippy? And by the way, this was the 80s when this conversation was happening. And I said, I mean Jiffy. And she's like, there is no such thing as Jiffy peanut butter. You're either thinking of Jif or Skippy. So right away, I think it's weird that I remember that as a kid. That it makes you wonder, how long has this been going on, right? But the way I settled the argument was I was like, I'll get it out, you know. I went over to the cupboard and I got out Jiffy peanut butter. And I set it down on the table kind of hard, you know, because she annoyed me. And she was like, oh, well, I'll be. It shut her up because she saw it. And she's like, well, we don't eat that anyways. We only eat, and I forget what it was, Peter Pan peanut butter or something like that. And I'm like, okay, well, you can starve then. Like, I don't care if you eat or not. But so that's why that memory is so vivid, is I won an argument with her. And that was rare, you know? Well, now Jiffy never existed. There's Jif peanut butter and there's Skippy peanut butter, but there's no such thing as Jiffy. So that, you know, that contradicts my memories. I have very clear memories of that. Forrest Gump, I mentioned this in an earlier video. We all remember Forrest Gump saying, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? Now the quote is, life was like a box of chocolates. It's past tense. And that makes no sense to me, because our Are you not alive anymore? Are you dead now when you're talking? When you say, well, this is what life was like. I mean, if you're still in life, then you would use present tense wording. Life is like this. You wouldn't say life was like that. That's very strange wording. And then the second half of it, you never know what you're going to get. That's kind of future tense. Again, that also makes the past tense wording not make any sense. But yeah, what do you remember there? And by the way, I'll mention, Forrest said, my mama always said, well, his mama was played by Sally Fields, right? A lot of people remember her being called Sally Fields. Interestingly enough, she's at the heart of a bunch of Mandela effects. I'll try to hit a couple of them real quick here. First of all, now her name is Sally Field, singular. Another one is her brother is a scientist at CERN, which again, I want to get into CERN, kind of save that for last. Tom Hanks, who was in Forrest Gump, was the guy they chose to turn CERN on. Well, and that's how, at least that's how it was at one point for me. I heard about that and I thought, why would you have Tom Hanks do that? That's weird. But now things have changed yet again, where CERN has been around since 1953. Okay, I guarantee you didn't have Tom Hanks turn it on in 1953 then. So yeah, just things are constantly changing. So speaking of which, Captain Crunch, this was my cereal as a kid. I loved the peanut butter crunch and occasionally crunch berries, but there was always Captain Crunch at my breakfast table. I would eat it and would usually pour myself a second bowl or whatever. And my grandma would say, hey, the bus is outside. And I would run out the door quick. And the whole time I was sitting there, I was staring at the box, looking at the artwork, looking at the font they used to write Captain Crunch with, that kind of thing, right? Well, what's changed is now his name is no longer Captain, it's Cap'n. It's CAP''N, Cap'n Crunch. Kind of weird. I've noticed there's a lot of Mandela effects where the name of something seems to kind of like shrink, or sometimes there'll be two separate letters and they'll merge together and form one letter. Excuse me, I got allergies. I need to cough for a second. Sorry about that. Next up is the Volkswagen symbol. I got a job for a little while working for a raceway, and there were a couple of race car drivers. They wanted me to do art, which would then be turned into decals that went on their race cars. I would paint billboards at gas stations, just a lot of stuff in that vein, right? And a lot of the guys who were really into vans, specifically the Volkswagen minibus. I was designing paint jobs for them. I was designing decals that would get cut out. There was a local place that did custom decals for cars. They did the decals for local police, things like that. They would have me do stuff like draw the Volkswagen symbol, or do something with it, like it's the Volkswagen symbol, but it's on fire. You get the idea, right? At any rate, I drew the Volkswagen symbol a bunch of times, and this is what it looked like. It's a V, and the V is like fused in the top of the W there. In fact, before I got that job, I actually didn't see that it was a VW at first. I was seeing the other lines in it. To me, it looked like something out of Star Trek or something like that, that like would be like a symbol someone would wear on their chest, you know, like they had the little communicators off to the side. Um, at any rate, I didn't realize it was a VW because it's seamless. Well, that has changed. Now there is a gap between the V and the W, which is kind of ironic because I was just talking about how things tend to want to go together. This one's coming apart. So there's a gap there. I swear in all the times I drew it, not once did I ever draw the gap. Not once did anybody ever tell me the drawing was wrong, which, by the way, if you do that for a living and you screw something up, I promise you, people tell you when it's wrong. And then you got to do the whole thing over again, and you don't get paid for the mistake version, right? So I'm a very detail-oriented guy. And at any rate, that's the Volkswagen symbol I remember, but it is no longer what the Volkswagen symbol officially looks like. When I first heard about that was around 10 years ago. And at the time, I could not find any residue for that anywhere. I actually remember going to a car lot with my wife because she agreed that this is what a Volkswagen symbol should look like. I think this is what made her believe in the Mandela effect, actually. And I remember we went to a car lot and we went around looking at all the Volkswagens. And I think I finally found hubcaps. Like one of the cars had not changed, and its hub, the center of the hubcap had Volkswagen symbols on it. And I showed that to her, and she was like, well, it's probably custom hubcaps because this is a used car lot. And, you know, they probably don't want sued by Volkswagen, so they changed something slightly. I was like, I don't think so. I think it's the real deal. But at any rate, what do you remember? Do you remember there being a gap in the middle of the Volkswagen symbol? Or do you remember it looking like this? I already did a video on C3PO. I remember him having 2 gold legs. Now he's got a silver leg. We got Darth Vader's head over on the other side. I remember him saying, Luke, I'm your father. But now he says, no, I'm your father. Let's do the Ford symbol. That's a good one to go to after the Volkswagen symbol. It is hard for me to find the logo looking like this. This is exactly what I remember the Ford logo looking like. The F of Ford, you know, again, kind of looks like cursive. But that crossbar, the right side of it ends, and it's almost like you're drawing an elongated triangle in a way, right? But that's how it ends, with these 2 points there. What has happened to the Ford logo is now the crossbar does a loop-de-loop like a roller coaster, and it's like a pigtail. It's very strange. Because I live in I grew up in a rural area. There were a lot of Ford fans in my area, and like I said before, I was doing art for local raceways and stuff like that. There's one near here where I'm kind of wanting to be anonymous, so I don't want to say its name. But their big thing is Ford Mustangs. And a lot of the drivers have a brand preference where they love Ford and they hate Chevy, right? I've drawn like a handful of Chevy logos in my time, but hardly any. The Ford logo, I literally bet I've drawn it more than 1,000 times. And that is always how it looked. So for that pigtail to be there, I'm like, no, absolutely not. That was never there before. And by the way, I should mention, yeah, I would always encourage people to research this stuff for themselves. The Ford logo has changed a little bit over the years, right? But this logo here, again, as of today's date, this logo never existed. and the curly Q thing, even though other parts of the logo look a little different, the curly Q is the one that's been there like the whole time practically. Okay. The next one here at the bottom is who remembers mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, right? I think we all remember that from the old Disney movie. Well, it's changed. It is no longer mirror, mirror. Now it is magic mirror. Magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. That one bothers a lot of people. Again, I've always been more of a Bugs Bunny fan. I was never really a Disney guy, but I've seen a ton of people online who are like, that was absolutely not the thing. And what is usually the case when people discover one of these is someone will say, well, it was probably like special features on a DVD, or it was probably like a director's cut or something like that. Because now we live in this era when we have all these options with movies. You got to go back to residue from before all that. Get out an old VCR tape, right? Something where there is no DVD menu. You were just hitting one button, play. You got one version of the movie. That's all you had. Watch that version of stuff, and usually you'll still catch Mandela effects, right? So if you put in these old VCR tapes, they have changed somehow where now they say magic mirror. And people swear up and down it was mirror, mirror. I think it was mirror, mirror too. And so now I'll get to CERN. And I think I'll do an entire video about CERN. But the weird thing about CERN and how it's connected with all this is CERN will make these videos, and they're not like, it's not like a training video for new employees going over safety or something like that. They'll make these weird videos where people will be like dancing and stuff and just holding up signs. And the weird thing is CERN made a video where almost all of these things I went over today were on signs or piece of paper or like a t-shirt or something that someone was holding. And if you go through their videos they make, it's almost like they're taunting people in a way. The only thing that all of these things have in common is they are Mandela effects. So it's like, why would CERN make a video for the public just to hold up a picture of Pikachu? And of course, in their version, he's got the yellow tail, right? Why would CERN, if it's all these scientists and stuff, why are they showing you the logo of an underwear company? Or, that kind of thing. And then CERN also, they put out this brochure that sometimes they let people take a tour of CERN. And CERN's location is weird. It's, if I remember correctly, they found this spot where multiple countries kind of come together. It's very close to Switzerland, but it's on the border. And so there's this sort of little spot where I want to say 3 countries come together, kind of like a letter Y. And at the very center of the Y, it's technically not a country there. And the reason they chose that place is because they didn't want anybody to stop them. And they say this. They didn't want anybody to stop them. They wanted a little area where there are no laws. And one of the reasons they wanted that to be the case is one of the things they openly said they were doing was they wanted to create small black holes on the surface of the Earth. Well, a black hole in space is where at the end of a star's life cycle, and not all stars, only certain stars, when they die, they collapse inwards and they have so much mass, nothing can escape, not even the light. So if you looked at it, because you're seeing the absence of light, it would look black to you. It would just look like a black hole in space, and everything's getting sucked into it. Well, so people didn't like hearing that CERN wanted to make black holes on Earth, right? It's like, well, okay, how much gravity would this thing have? Is it sucking things into it? Is it gonna like, would it be dangerous? And CERN was kind of like, well, you know, we're doing it. And that was the reason why they were there, is then nobody could tell them no. So, you know, right out of the gate, CERN seems adversarial, and they talk about this, what is it called? Higgs boson particles. They call them the building blocks of the universe. And they say things like, we're going to destroy them, sort of take them apart, see how they work, and see, we're going to learn more about the universe. Okay. Another video I saw was a scientist who had been fired from CERN for basically warning them that what they were doing was dangerous. And he said, imagine if a metaphor for the universe is it's a Jenga tower. And when they're destroying these key particles that the universe is like made up of and stuff, he goes, imagine if that is like pulling out the blocks at the bottom of the Jenga tower. You might be learning something about its construction by doing that, but what you're doing is still dangerous, right? So I'll do a whole video about CERN, because the other weird thing is the spot they chose was actually a temple in the ancient world. And the being that was worshipped at that site is also associated with bad stuff. And CERN has a statue of Shiva, which is associated with destruction in the Hindu faith. And, you know, that, you know, this is another thing that it kind of freaks people out. It's like, why, you know, why would you have that there if it's destruction, you know? And then the CERN logo, which you can see here, looks like a stylized version of 666. And of course, that carries negative connotations in our culture. So it freaks people out. I'll devote a whole video just to CERN, but I just wanted to cover those today. To kind of, I have some friends that are unfamiliar with the Mandela effect, so I'm going to send them copies of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If so, think about hitting like and subscribe, and be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know if you've experienced the Mandela effect yourself. If so, what was the change? I always like hearing other people's comments. I think this is a really interesting topic of discussion. But I'm gonna get going. I hope that you guys have a good week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.